Hey! Anyone who's there? Hi. Hello. Hi. You know what? I have a new camera. I'm realizing now I don't love the light that I have. What's up, Wild AP? I'm going to be right back. I promise you I'm coming back. I just want to do something. I'll be right back. What up, B-Boy FX? Like to have you here. 2 seconds. Okay, sorry for that. I wanted to move some lighting stuff around. Oh yeah, B-Boy FX Jamie. Good to see y'all. Okay, we're here. Another weird one, right? It seems like every Friday now, some crazy political thing happens, which makes us all feel weird. Like 2 weeks ago when we started back up, Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed away, and now we got Trump has COVID, and he's in the hospital, and it's all over the news, and everyone cares about it, but we don't really care about that much here. So welcome back, and just a couple of housekeeping things. I figured out last week how to directly upload these to YouTube when I'm done. So if anyone ever wants to look back on this, I know Twitch keeps stuff for a couple weeks, but I am going to be uploading episodes of this to YouTube and hoping that I don't say anything so crazy that it makes someone mad on YouTube. I don't know. So we're going to talk some more about Burnout Society tonight. Once again, like I said, I'm not like reading ahead and coming back with some like hella prepared, I've seen it all thing. I'm going a couple essays a week and they're really short, but I'm just loving it so far because it's great to read a work of philosophy that touches on real things happening now, and it's just really relatable, and that's great. I think sometimes, like, we talked about this before, how philosophy is always relative to like problems in a certain era, age, whatever it might be. So something that I think is really cool about this book is that it's contextualizing contextualizing some problems in a really interesting way. Wow, yeah, well, the cats are great is enough to get the YouTube comment section pissed off. YouTube comments are rough. Some of you know this, some of you don't. For my day job, I help make YouTube videos. And sometimes the comments are rough, and then sometimes random people don't even comment. They send me a DM that's like, fucking kill yourself, you piece of shit. It's great. It's great. I love people. But back to philosophy and problems, right? I think philosophy is at its best when it is motivated by, I guess, one of two things. Wonder, to get back to a kind of Aristotelian sense of things. That something wondrous, unexpected, mysterious, awe-inspiring happens, and that inspires philosophical contemplation and thought. I think the other thing that inspires really good philosophy is problems, and often material problems that directly affect human existence. So, and I go back to this as a point of reference, and I'm sorry that I keep going back to these figures, but you know, if you know anything about me, you know that my two favorite philosophical writers, two of my favorite, are Soren Kierkegaard and Karl Marx, both responding to problems in a lot of ways. Kierkegaard is interested in existential and problems of internalized subjectivity. So what does it mean for me to have faith? What does it mean for me to subjectively relate to knowledge? What does it mean for me to deal with things like, you know, anxiety and despair? These are big questions, and they're problems, right? Problems. So Hegel is a problem. I like that. No, Hegel's not the problem, but I won't get into it now. I gotta make sure I put all the comments on the screen now, so anyone watches this on YouTube later sees who I'm yelling at. But I like the emoji you included. That makes good sense of this. So Kierkegaard's kind of responding to some existential problems that I guess we could say like are happening internally. Marx does a really great job of responding to problems happening externally. So we're talking about, you know, economic, political, and material problems, and trying to engage in philosophical contemplation about those things. That's why I love those two so much, because I think they can be read together as offering a kind of more general theory of how we think about the relationship between sort of internalized and externalized, let's call it alienation. And then, you know, alienation for Marx has a lot more to do with me as a laborer being alienated from the means of production or from the product of my labor. For Kierkegaard, alienation is this internal process by which I feel alienated from God. Now, we might be like, I don't care about God, so it doesn't matter. But that just means alienated from some like essence of your being. Alienated from like what it means to be human, what it means to be part of a community. That feeling we have sometimes, like things are like out of sorts. And I think that this book does a good job of also talking about internal and external problems. I think the book starts by talking about internal problems and issues of too much positivity experienced by individuals in the 21st century. And I do think a lot of what he gets into in this book is particular for people who are a part of, let's call it like the millennial or Gen Z generation or whatever it might be. I don't think 65-year-olds, well, I guess a lot of 65-year-olds now have like gotten on Facebook and do like QAnon stuff all day. It's fucking horrifying. But I think their brains haven't been formed by that so much. So I think something that he gets into in the book is the way in which growing up with a, you know, let's call it digital economy, let's call it social media, let's call it constant internet access, let's call it smartphones, whatever it might be. Growing up with all that has affected our neuronal development, the way that our brains work. Not to get too nerdy and go off on a side tangent, but we know that our brain develops in tandem with the world around us. And, you know, this kind of like a biologically Marxist point. Marx will talk about how, you know, material conditions shape consciousness, consciousness shapes history. So, like, it's not dramatic to say that certain aspects of your, and so I'll use him as an example. Dude Abides 1985 says, very early millennial here. Me too. But your brain as a millennial is going to have a slightly different neuronal structure from like a 70-year-old who grew up in a different time. There's I think a William Connolly book that's on like the politics of speed. And okay, I might be wrong on this. Once again, I'm not coming to this with pages of research. I'm riffing, we're talking, we're hopefully having fun. But in this Bill Connolly book, he talks about how speed changed. Okay, let's go back to this. He gets into the fact that movie speeds have changed over time. So if you watch a movie from the 50s or 60s, the cuts between scenes take a long time. So there might be 30 seconds, 60 seconds, 90 seconds on one shot before it cuts. Now compare that to like a Bourne movie. Go watch like the Bourne Ultimatum, Bourne Supremacy, whatever it might be. It cuts like that. Then we're there. Then we're there. Then we're there. And watching content that cuts that fast sends messages to our brain that we need that speed to feel satisfied. Even think about how like often when we are watching TV, we're like watching TV, but we might have our laptop out, or we're playing a game, or our phone is out, or we're like looking through a magazine, or we're texting friends. The way in which we feel this need to have a constant input, right? Because our brain wants that. We've trained it to want that. But to be clear, we didn't train it. It's not your fault. It's a societal thing. Well, they P is saying Zoomer raised by boomers. Any philosophy, Dude Abides Out, any philosophy about brain development and things like ADD, ADHD, bipolar depression, Asperger's. I mean, I think that this book, to be 100% honest, deals with that well. There is not quite this, and this isn't like something I'm a huge expert on, but Catherine Malibu, a French philosopher, has written some good stuff on neuroplasticity and trauma and the way that trauma and events affect our neural subjectivity. So there's some stuff there. I know Adrian Johnston's written about some of that stuff, but I'm not like a philosophy mind expert. B-Boy Effect / Jamie says, I was born in 1994. I feel fortunate that I can remember a time before Google and mobile phones. Verbal Records. I think this is Alex. If it is, you're the best. This is so sick that you're here. It says, interesting to see my teenage cousins watch films, skip through dialogue, go straight to action. Oh my God. Yeah, it's the new generation has no romanticism for narrative structure. Yes, and see, I even find this. If I sit down sometimes to watch a film from like the 70s, even the first 10 minutes, my brain is just like, oh, I need to like pull my fucking phone. I gotta like get on the computer. What else is going on? Eventually, I settle into that, and I think that's what's happening here. So let's talk about the book a little bit. We're going to start by talking about this chapter, Profound Boredom. Again. If you don't have this, if you're on this right now and you want to like read along or check this book out, if you just Google the Burnout Society, you'll find a PDF. Also, Jamie, B-Boy Effect, posted a bunch of links last week. Yes, it is Alex. I'll just say this. Alex is I had the pleasure of having him as a student. It feels weird to say that because he's a sick, intelligent, awesome dude in his own right. But yeah, so it's great to have you here. B-Boy Fight brings up, this is the topic of Byung-Chul Han's book, The Scent of Time. Okay, got to keep reading more. Dude Abide says, yay, Alex. Wow. Everyone getting along. This is fun. So let's talk a little bit about what he gets into in this chapter on profound boredom. And I think this is a phenomenon or problem we deal with, right? When's the last time you went on a walk and you just walked? Didn't have headphones in, weren't looking at your phone. When's the last time you were on public transportation? I mean, for a lot of us, it's been a while because there's a disease, but just work with me here. But when's the last time you've been on public transportation where you just sat there? Didn't even read, didn't have your phone out, whatever it might be. When's the last time you just kind of just sat in your house? Or for some of us, I don't know about y'all, I listen to shit every night in bed. I put a podcast on to fall asleep to. I couldn't tell you the last time I just got in bed in silence and let myself fall asleep. So I think it's something we can relate to, this idea that we avoid boredom and we always want stimuli. So the first line he gets into in this chapter, he says, excessive positivity. Now remember from last time, when he's talking about positivity, we're talking about sort of like the call is coming from inside the house stuff, right? It's not an era where our problems are external and threats from the outside. Excessive positivity is a drive coming from the inside. So once again, culture, the media, the economy, and I feel like I'm jumping around like a nutcase. So I'm going to try to slow down. But if we connect the shit together, right? Well, we watch a lot of shit, and shit is like fast, right, on TV, and things are hyped, and there's colors, and things are loud. Well, why? Because they're trying to sell advertising. They need to keep our attention to sell shit. Ads themselves now look more like content. Commercials look more like movies and shows we'd want to watch. You know, Travis Scott has a McDonald's meal. That's not quite related to what I'm saying, but I just wanted to say it. So, like, our brains have been shaped by an entertainment system connected to a marketing apparatus, right? So, and let's be honest, we're talking about capitalism here. And that thing has sort of like implanted us with the desire for input. We are a system that wants input constantly, and it's sort of like put a bug into our system. So he says this: excessive positivity also expresses itself as an excess of stimuli, information, and impulses. This is great. And I think like, you gotta love a book where you can read one sentence and you're just like, shit, this gives me stuff to think about. So when we're thinking about excessive positivity, he gives us a list of 3. Excessive stimuli. Oh, I forgot to do this too. Just because it looks cool. Hey, there's the book we're reading. Great. So excessive stimuli, right? What does that mean? It means our system always wants input. I want to look at shit. I want to read shit. I want to hear something. I feel the need to have stimuli. I feel the need for my system to consume media, culture, whatever it might be. It then says information. I mean, think about information sometimes. When's the last time, you're watching a movie? Oh, what was she in before? I look up this actor's Wikipedia. Then I follow a link to this. Then I look into that and like, whoa, her dad was a part of this political party. Now I want to read about that a little bit, or whatever it might be. We go down these rabbit holes where we have this desire for information. And I think there's a difference, right? He doesn't say an excess of knowledge. Doesn't say knowledge. He says information. Knowledge is sort of, I'm going to do it. I'm going to touch on Kierkegaard. Knowledge is a type of information that we subjectively appropriate that helps us understand and relate to the world. Information is just like, we want to know shit. We want to know all the shit. We want to have a lot of facts. If you were like, knowledge makes you a wise person, information makes you someone that would like kick ass at pub trivia or something like that, right? He then says, so excess of stimuli, information, and impulses. The impulse is like, so right now, you all can't see it, but right here, I'll show it to you. My phone has been sitting here. I'll be honest with you. A couple times, we've been doing this for 15 minutes. I've seen my phone there and felt my hand like going for it. That's stupid. I'm pushing it further away now. It's fucking crazy. It's crazy that I have this impulse to do this. Gotta know them all. I love it. What's up, Karl, Valpoke? Yeah, it's like the Pokemon theory of knowledge, that it becomes more about knowing stuff and not having knowledge or wisdom. And that might sound silly, but it's true. And this is also why sometimes, this isn't everyone, but why some bad scientist, I'm going to say Neil deGrasse Tyson, because also I think we know that he's like a shitty dude. I might be wrong, but I think he got accused of some bad stuff, so I don't feel bad speaking negatively on him. There's a type of scientist who will be like, well, actually, this philosopher is wrong because of this information I know. And it's like, dude, what are you talking about? We're working towards knowledge about what it means to live a good life and strive for wisdom in a fractured world, and now you're going to tell me, like, you have data points that counteract that. Get the fuck out of here. But, shouts to Neil deGrasse Tyson, though. Yeah. Verbal Records says, also, check out Verbal Records. Look this, you can look it up. They make music. I've listened to some of it. Also, Alex, I think you do have a YouTube channel now. You should post the link here. Tell people to look at it. I'll post it here. It's honestly as if these devices are talisman or an anxiety blanket. Yeah, like the device. Listen, they own us, and like everyone's talked about that movie, The Social Dilemma, that came out on Netflix. I actually I hosted a podcast episode on the Show Me the Meaning movie podcast about it. The movie has problems because it ignores capitalism and it ignores the functional systems that lead to the information economy, but it gets at the fact that we're all addicted to shit. It did make me deactivate my Facebook. Okay, I'm just going to read a little bit more. He says after that, perception becomes fragmented and scattered. Once again, perception and attention are important parts of like doing and thinking philosophically and even living a good or an ethical life. It's a cultivated skill to perceive carefully. It's a cultivated skill to pay attention. Often when you read a really good philosophical text, and honestly a really good novel, and of course novels can often be philosophical, the things that stand out are, oh my God, she noticed this thing that I just haven't noticed. He's perceived this text in a way, this idea in a way I never have. So much of what we're doing when we're thinking philosophically is just trying to pay attention, to cultivate a sense of perception in which we see what's going on and we're not just darting around. Because often we end up being, you ever get like a laser pointer and point it at a cat and the cat freaks out? This is probably animal abuse. Don't do this, but as a kid we used to do it. And the cat just freaks the fuck out because it follows this little pointer. Well, we've kind of become that in a certain sense in our constant pursuit of information, stimuli, whatever it might be. He goes on and says, moreover, the mounting burden of work makes it necessary to adopt particular dispositions towards time and attention. This in turn affects the structure of attention and cognition. So work comes into this as well. Think about the way in which work draws our attention away from other things, or the way that work structures your attention in life in general. Think about the way that when you get home from your job, what am I talking about? You're probably not going to your job right now. But when you went to your job someplace, or if you do, I know Dude Abides gets out and about for his job. Often, like, we get home and our mind is still paying attention or thinking in like job mode, right? It affects us in that way. It affects our cognition. I'll read like one more line. We can just riff a little bit more. He says that the attitude toward time and environment, known as multitasking, does not represent civilizational progress. I think this is really important, right? Often, like, if you ever read one of those stupid fucking books, that's like the 4-hour work week, how to make $1 million doing nothing. First of all, the people that write these books, a lot of their like secret knowledge is to like outsource labor to underpaid people in the Philippines and stuff like that. So it's like basically like, hey, you don't want to do your work? Find a group of people somewhere else that'll do it for cheaper. Oh, like colonization, Dad? Yes, son, like colonization. Like when we went around the world and went to countries that we didn't need to be in and subjugated people to forms of labor because of our economic dominance that took away their autonomy so that we could have cheaper shit. Yes, just like that, son. That's what happens in these instances, right? Why did I start talking about 4-hour workweek people? Jesus. Oh, because there's this like fetishization of multitasking. If I can do 1 million things at once, if I can keep track of all my stuff and I have all my apps and my apps help me keep track of all the different things and I have different projects I'm working on, blah, blah, blah. We've turned this into a good thing. So-and-so can multitask. Like if you apply for a job in certain places, you might be asked questions like, how good are you at managing a bunch of different projects? How are you at multitasking? And of course, it can be good in some senses. Like, I want a pilot who can multitask drinking their vodka and flying a plane. That was a joke about how pilots are drunks. They're not, but still fun. But I think that he brings up something really important in the book where he says this. He says, multitasking is commonplace among wild animals. It is an attentive technique indispensable for survival in the wilderness. So we think of multitasking as this thing that makes us like better than animals as evolved humans or whatever it might be. But think about what an animal does. When the animal's sleeping, it has like the one eye open to see if a predator is going to kill it. When it's eating, it's making sure it can get back to where it needs to be and not get killed. If it's having sex, it's also thinking these things. An animal has to be doing this stuff to survive. Now, one of the joys of being humans in relatively developed societies is we should have the freedom to not multitask. And his discussion here made me think about Aristotle, because, Aristotle points out that, and Kant points out this as well. We probably just got it from Aristotle. What am I talking about? But, Aristotle points out, like, if we were just meant to, like, eat and shit and reproduce, we wouldn't have reason. We wouldn't have the cognitive ability that we have. Right? Because it's not evolutionarily sensible. If we were truly just here to be a multitasking animal, reason would be a curse. And, there's some good evolutionary biology on this that gets into, like, reason and freedom being like these huge mistakes that evolution made. Oops. But and Aristotle uses the same logic to get to the point that what we can do as humans that's really important is contemplation and reflection. So like the cow in the field isn't reflecting on the meaning of the shit it stepped in as it went to eat some grass. The bird in the sky isn't reflecting on like how the flight patterns of jets are messing with the migration of its buds in the flying V. They're set for survival. Not flourishing, not a good life, survival. Think back to like the Socratic text from Plato. We want not life, but a good life. What is life? Pure raw life is like survival. Pure life is don't fucking die. Right? The good life is I can already assume a certain level of comfort to where I'm not dying, so I can contemplate meaning, I can contemplate truth, I can contemplate ideological structures are out and about. This camera keeps doing a thing where it like autofocuses. I wonder if I can change that. It's new. I got it today. It's used, by the way. Just someone else had it. I have it now. You don't need to know this. So I think that's really interesting when in this chapter on Profound Boredom, Han gets into the idea of contemplation being important. He says this on page 13. Concern for the good life, which also includes a life as a member of the community, is yielding more and more to the simple concern for survival. We used to think about the good life. We used to have time for this. Now we're caught up with a desire to survive. Like, what does it mean to live a good life? To live a good life means I have time to participate in a community. It means I have some level of health and financial stability so that I can meet other people. I can participate in culture. I can see a film or a play. I can go to a community meeting. I could go on long walks in the woods. I could learn about birds. All of that stuff contributes to me living a good life. When I'm just focused on survival, I can't. Think about the political effect of this, though. What am I able to do politically when I'm burned out? What can my involvement and participation be socially when I'm working 60 to 80 hours a week, trying to keep up a social life when I'm not doing that, or gaming, watching films, whatever it might be. And I'm not hating on gaming and watching films. It's just like the shit I need to do to get my mind off my job that sucks. And I'm also anxious because my healthcare might run out. And I'm also worried because I might lose my job and I don't know if unemployment's still there. When I'm focused on that type of survival, am I taking the time to critically think and analyze what's going on in the world around me, to think about political struggle, to think about my role in a community? Do I have time to speak truth to power? I don't. Let's quickly check the chat. Wild AP says, get rich quick by getting dumbasses to buy your book is another common one with 4-hour work week people. Yes, scammers and fucking grifters. Rage at issues you have a little involvement. Yeah, rage at issues you have a little involvement with, for sure. In terms of like what we can do politically. So often, like, think about what we do these days. I'm not like work all day, it's some shitty job, make enough money to get by while still worrying about our future, so I can sit on the couch and watch the news and be like, this sucks, all these people are horrible, everything is unjust around me. But I don't have time to like organize or do anything. I mean, why do you think in ancient society lower classes had to work all the fucking time? So they wouldn't have time to like overtake the landowners and the kings and whoever it might have been. We don't need the people to have free time. The people should be hamsters on a wheel that are busy. And it used to be that we had to go to the office to be busy. But what he points out in this book, The Burnout Society, which is on the screen, is that now we keep ourselves busy. We don't need like the landowners, the kings, and the evil bosses of yesteryear, because we've internalized that. We are our own oppressors and bosses in these ways, and that's why we're yelling at ourselves. I want to say this too. I don't think everything in this book is perfect. I think there's some problems, but I think it'd be fun to get to that at the end. And I think probably in 2 weeks, I'm going to see if Jamie, who's what's your username again? B-Boy Effect on here. I'm going to see if he'll come on so we can have a discussion about this book. And I think then would be a good time to bring up, not even problems, just like criticisms. No, I'll say this, no book is perfect. If you've ever read a book and you're just like, it's perfect, nothing's wrong, you're wrong. Yeah, I said it. Now, he says this is on page 13, around there. Han says this, he says, we owe the cultural achievements of humanity, which include philosophy, to deep contemplative intention. Culture presumes an environment in which deep attention is possible. So I think, one of the my takeaways at least from that chapter is like what happens when we don't have time to contemplate, and all of the factors that lead to that lack of contemplation. There's something, if you've ever read Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics, there's this thing where he gets to like, what is the final good for humanity? What's like the main thing we need for the good life? And he says contemplation. The rest of the book, he's talking a lot about habit and action. And I've taught that book a few times where the students are like, this guy sounded cool. Like he wanted me to really do shit. And now he's telling me I should just sit around and think. That sucks. I don't like philosophy. I'm dropping out of your class, leaving school, and becoming a race car driver. The last part never happened. But the interesting thing is, Aristotle's point is, because right after he says that, he brings up political science. We contemplate about ourselves in the world so that we can affect those things. If I don't have time to step back and think about myself, I can't make myself better. I can't become a person that's striving towards goodness. I can't become a more just, kinder, loving person. If I don't have time to like critically look at the society around me, I'm not able to like actively think about oppression, alienation, and systematic injustice, right? I need contemplation to do that. This is also why I think people should read Kierkegaard and Marx together, because Kierkegaard has one of the best strategies ever for what it means to think internally. And then Marx tells us what to do when we got that figured out. And there's a line in the book on page 14 where he says, modern Cartesian doubt is taking the place of wonder. And I like that. This idea that, and if we know anything about Descartes, I think therefore I am, right? Descartes and sort of modern philosophy in general put an emphasis on doubting the foundations of knowledge that came before to make sure we had a solid foundation for that knowledge, right? So philosophy began in doubt. It didn't begin in wonder. It began in first doubting all knowledge and all truth to get a new foundation. I'm not saying that's bad. Descartes is great and important, but we miss out on wonder. And this is why recently, I think not being an academic philosopher, professor, or whatever, has made me re-fall in love with Greek philosophy and its emphasis on wonder and goodness and all these things. And philosophy is a way of life, because I don't write philosophical papers. I'm not applying for jobs. I'm not trying to go to conferences. So I think one of the things I'm thinking through right now, and I'm thinking through this with you, and to be clear, philosophy is a dialogical thing. Me being able to do this, me interacting with you, is a wildly helpful part of this process. And that's why I love you and thank you for being here. And I'll say this, if you're watching this later on Twitch or YouTube, leave comments and still participate. We'll still have that dialogue. But something that I'm working through right now, and something that you're helping me with and we're kind of doing together, is, figuring out what does philosophy mean and how is it useful in non-institutional settings and non-academic settings. And to be real grim, there's a world where pretty soon we don't have institutional settings. Verbal Records is in here. His name is Alex. I won't say his last name because I won't blow up his spot. The university that he studied at, where I teach at in England, the University of the West of England, they recently tried to shut down their philosophy department. Well, why did they try to shut it down? Well, of course, because it doesn't meet the... Okay, I thought I was going on a tangent. I was going to stop. I can connect this. So why would they shut down a philosophy department? Well, what does a philosophy department do? Emphasizes slowing down to contemplate. Emphasizes attention and perception. What does the modern university want? Speed, efficiency, multitasking, job training. Become a part of the capitalist machine. Get a business degree. Get an internship. Also get a job immediately so the university can say our graduates get jobs. Right? Philosophy doesn't meet those metrics. So universities are starting to get rid of it. And I'm not trying to be wild here, but that's why it's important for all of us to think philosophically and do this, because pretty soon there's not going to be space to do it. And if we don't have philosophers, we're fucked. And when I say we don't have philosophers, we're fucked, I don't mean academic philosophers. I mean people that are thinking philosophically. I mean all of us. Although I think I did Sorry Dude Abides 1985. Goodbye Moon is wrong. I did say every book is wrong except for Goodnight Moon. It's the one right book. I mean, that's a good one. I guess I mean philosophical text. I think there's a risk. We all do it. It's a good thing to read a work of philosophy and think to yourself, holy shit, I found my new Bible. This is incredible. And I felt that multiple times. I felt that reading Kierkegaard. I felt that reading de Beauvoir. I felt that reading Catherine Malibu. I felt that reading Hegel. I felt that reading Fichte. I felt that reading Aristotle. Aristotle, I always come back to as the one who I think might have been the most right, but we'll see. But then you step back, you're able to critically interact with stuff, which is better. It's sort of like in life. It's not good to think a person is perfect, right? If you're like pursuing someone romantically and you think they're perfect, you'll let them walk all over you. You got to remember they're just a person too. You did not come here for life advice or dating advice. So let's talk a little bit about Vita Activa, the section that starts on page 16, which is largely him riffing off Hannah Arendt. So Hannah Arendt, a early 20th century, I guess middle 20th century philosopher, student of Martin Heidegger. I think they had a thing, right? Hannah Arendt and Martin Heidegger did sex. This is great. Yeah. Val Poquet says, I mean, that's the point of Wittgenstein on nonsense, right? The book can't say everything. 100%. I'm not like the biggest Wittgenstein head, meaning that I just haven't read enough. I need to. That's actually something, Karl, on my shelf. Once I left academia, one of the first things I did was get some Wittgenstein books because I was like, okay, this is something I never worked on before. So now I have motivation to do that. B-boy effect. I assume you're confirming that Arendt and Heidegger had sex. And Activia. Yes, via Activia. Arendt was into probiotic yogurt. So Vita Activia, just like the active life is what we're talking about here. Something that happens too much in philosophy is this emphasis on like Latin and Greek terms. Sometimes it can be alienating and excluding. I don't like it. But let's see. There was something I wanted to bring up from this. I had a note that I read in the text. There's a lot of good stuff here. I'll just say there's a lot of good stuff in this chapter. And also, too, if you're reading this, just put in the chat the shit you want to talk about or stuff you're interested in. But I'll just bring up on page 19. I know I keep showing you. You can barely see it, but there's the 19. On page 19, Han says this. He says, the reaction to a life that has become bare and radically fleeting. And to say that life has become bare, in one sense, means life has become more about survival. And as we've already said, to say that life becomes about survival means that, how do I phrase this? It means to say that, like, we're not flourishing, we're not pursuing the good life, we're simply trying to not die, right? That's what survival is, to not die. Val Poquet says, the contemplative life and the yogurty life. Yogurt's great, by the way. I was out on yogurt for a lot of years. I'm back into it now. Maybe it's because I'm, like, older and it settles my gut, but God, yogurt. And you know what? People think of yogurt just as a breakfast food. It's a great midday snack, too. Healthy source of protein. Oh, yeah, I forgot. We're sponsored by yogurt now. This whole show is sponsored by Big Yogurt. But he says, the reaction to a life has become bare and radically fleeting. And when we say bare and radically fleeting, I don't know about you all, but he gets to this in the book. When life becomes bare and about survival, it feels shorter. Like our finitude becomes more obvious. If I'm living a life where, think about it this way. Have you ever been on like a great, I don't know, camping trip, or you're somewhere with friends and like you don't have all the burdens of work and society, and you're hanging out, you're sitting by a stream, you're grilling, you crack a cold one, you get a good night's sleep, you see a bear, I don't know. You're not thinking about death. Maybe when you see the bear you are. You're caught up in an experience. You're paying attention to where you are, and it makes life feel more full. It's a fuller experience, like phenomenologically speaking, I guess, or not. When all I'm worried about is surviving, death is a lot more apparent. Finitude is a lot more apparent. So that's what he's getting into here. And he says that fleeting occurs as hyperactivity, hysterical work, and production. I don't want to die, so I'm freaking out. I'm paying attention to a lot of stuff. I'm working a lot. I'm trying to produce, but it's not helping. Val Poquet points out oikos. I feel like I always say that word wrong. Oikos, akos. I'm going to say oikos is the yogurt of being, though. It is. It truly is, because that means being in Greek. And then he gets into this point as well where Han says this, and he's talking about what it means to work for us, what it means for us to like labor in this world of survival. He says one exploits oneself. It means that exploitation is possible even without domination. And that's just scary, this idea that we exploit ourselves. That there are times, and I know I said this last time, and I hope it's not like beating a dead horse. There's times where like we are the one telling ourselves, you need to work more. You're lazy. You're not doing enough. Like I have times where I like in bed at night. Sorry, this is too personal. Feel like you're not doing enough. Why aren't you writing something right now? Why aren't you outlining an idea? Why aren't you making something? That impulse to produce is inside of our head now, and it sucks. And so it's sort of that thing. Think about it this way: like if you were ever bullied in school, fuck that bully. They were wrong. You're the shit. You have better character from it. And I hope whoever bullied you either A, got their life together, they're doing great, they've reconciled and sort of like apologized for what they did, or B, that their life fucking sucks. I'll be honest, I hate bullies. But if you're ever bullied, sometimes an effect of that is you can internalize what the bully said about you. Or if you've ever been, and not to be too dark here, people that, might get treated poorly by a parent or a loved one. There's this thing where the abuse becomes internalized, and then you have that voice in your head being like, you are dumb. You are a piece of shit. I don't know. I got bullied a bit as a kid. I made it out. It's fine. But, when I was young, I struggled to overcome that stuff. And I think that that's what Han's getting into here when we talk about self-exploitation. We are the boss in our own head saying produce. We are the angry owner of production yelling at us to get our asses back on the line to make more shit for consumption. Let's see. Yeah, and I'll just read the last line here. So one of the things he's doing in this section, by the way, is saying that Arendt is focusing so much on that active life that she's glossing over the importance of the contemplative life, and that the contemplative life is actually what we need to get away from the constant activity of society. The last line of the section, he says, it escapes her notice that the loss of ability to contemplate, which among other things leads to the absolutization of vita activa, is also responsible for the hysteria and nervousness of modern society. The hysteria and nervousness of modern society, because we never get to contemplate. Think about the news. 24 hours. Every story is breaking. Everything's happening right now. Everything's the most important thing ever. It's hysterics. So I don't know. So that's the end of that section. That's kind of all I wanted to get into in talking about these, but I'm liking this book so far. I'm finding it really interesting. And I think this is the type of book, by the way, that I would definitely see like a very uptight academic philosopher maybe getting mad at. And this is something Jamie might know as well, or B-Boy effect. It reminds me of, so the French philosopher Alain Badiou, who I like a lot, and Alain Badiou is one of those figures who at times I've been like, he is all right and good. But he writes really technical works that are grounded in like mathematics and set theory and stuff like that. Set theory is mathematics. But normally he'll write like a big book. Like, I thought I had one back here. Right there. It's one of his big books. But then let's see if I have one of these. But then he also writes, I'm going to point to one right here, small books that get at the ideas from the big philosophical tomes in a really relatable way that like anyone could understand. Like he wrote a book on ethics that he said was aimed at high school students. And to me, I don't know, this book reads, and I need to do more research. Why did I hold it up when it's on the screen? I'm so dumb. But to me, this reads like something that is meant for, I mean, it's not like, it has a lot of references to it, but it's relatively accessible. And I'm really digging that. And I think its ability to talk about stuff that's relatable is great. I'll look at some comments. In the meantime, if you're still here, if you have thoughts on the book, if you're liking it, not liking it, if you have questions, post them in the comments now because we'll start winding down in a second. So B-Boy Effect, Jamie says, Arendt and Heidegger dated before World War II, but had a falling out because the latter got involved in the Nazis. And ooh, that makes sense. If you're Jewish and you're having an affair with a Nazi, I would leave them. They did make up after the war and stayed friends until their deaths. Arendt even gave a speech at Heidegger's birthday. And Walter Benjamin is Arendt's uncle? This is great. Guys, learning's the best. Information, right? Due to Bides 1985 says nervousness, right up my alley. Yeah, but I think that's what Han's getting at. Like, why are we nervous? Why are we anxious? Why does society feel hysterical? Oh, yes. Badiou wrote the preface to Han's book, The Agony of Eros, that Austin is definitely going to talk about. Let me know where Austin's talking about that. I think he's going to come on here and maybe talk as well. But yeah, I don't know if we'll talk about it here. But I was planning to get that book and read that next, Agony and Eros. And I love that those two are relating and have stuff to talk about. So let me know. I'll do a sort of last call for questions or thoughts or anything right now. And in the meantime, for next week, same shit. So we talked about Profound Boredom and Vita Activa. The two sections I'm going to read and talk about next week are the Pedagogy of Seeing and the Bartleby case. So if you're reading along, just the next two, and then we'll do the next two after that. And then hopefully, and Jamie, I can email you about this. So then hopefully in 3 weeks, we can have a bit of a discussion about the book and bring some people on. Oh, and Austin gets on this podcast. Of course. Yes. He's definitely going to come on. So yeah. And I think maybe we'll do a thing where like I have a couple people on to talk about it. Maybe we'll do a little panel discussion. I'll get Jamie on here. I'll get Austin. The only bummer is a bunch of like dudes. Wait, I think you're a male identifying person. Jamie, I don't know. B-boy effect. You're Jamie. I guess that name goes either way. I'm sorry if I misgendered you. Wild AP says, one thing I picked up from this book is that exploitation may be an inherent part of human life. If someone isn't doing it to you, you end up doing it yourself. That's an interesting take, right? Because then that brings up that question, like, is human existence without exploitation possible, right? Is human life without alienation possible? I don't want to try to answer that right now, but I think that's really important. And I do think we have to be fair that as much as we might want to be really optimistic about that, not a lot of examples of that not happening. So I think that's really interesting, and we should talk about that more for sure. I like this. Hereta, sorry if I'm saying that wrong, says, but sometimes contemplating becomes addictive to the point I use it to avoid creating anything. So this is important too, right? There's different types of contemplation. There's like this neurotic contemplation that's becomes anxiety and nervousness. I don't know if that's what you're talking about, but I do that as well. And then there's a contemplation that's sort of like thinking that facilitates acting. And I think that's what Han gets into in the book, in distinguishing that Arendtian shift between activity and contemplation. But that's a really, really good point. And cool, Jamie, I'm sorry that I didn't misgender you or say anything shitty. And then Wild AP, B-Boy FX says, even though it's not addressed so much academically, Han does provide a solution for this problem. I'm excited to get to that. I don't know, maybe you shouldn't tell us now, Jamie. Maybe you should hold on and it'll be the spoiler at the end. Wild AP says, I was real optimistic thinking I was living without being exploited, but I'm a textbook example of auto-exploitation. Yeah, but I think and I mentioned this as well, I'm reading this book right now alongside this, like a kind of popular text called Can't Even. It's on millennials and the burnout generation. And it's describing this same thing, the way in which we become tools of auto-exploitation. And the chapter I just read in that book, it's by Anne Helen Peterson. She talks about how school and education now, by creating, like training us for college, just create us as like workers that are always worried of falling short. It's really kind of dark. Val Poquet says, yeah, the thinking is an excuse for inaction is another thing Kierkegaard is good at warning us about. 100%. And this is, I think when I first did this a while ago, I ranted a little bit about some stuff Kierkegaard says in the present age. But yeah, like, you know, when Kierkegaard critiques a lot of the Hegelians on reflection, yes, he thinks it's bad if all we do is like a masturbatory circle jerk of reflection for reflection's sake. But it can't be an excuse. We think so that we can live better, you know, and this is back to Greek philosophy. We don't examine our lives so we could sit down and examine for examination's sake. We examine life so that we can live a good life. Same thing's happening here. So I'm going to wind down. This has been fun, as always. Kevin, about 45 minutes. I think that's enough for... See, this is the thing. I feel like I need to keep these short because our attention spans are ruined. So as always, back next week, Friday, 5 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time, at the same place. In the meantime, this will be up on Twitch for 2 weeks. It'll also be up on YouTube. And then if you want to, stick around because in 13 minutes, this channel is going to have Gazi and Burns. It's sort of like a talk show, comedy show with my comedy partner, Sean Gazi. In the meantime, you know, hit me up on Twitter if you need anything. And I'll catch you all next week. Thanks, everyone. This has been really fun.
Yeah, it's for my street niggas. Feel it. On the count of three, say fuck the police. 1, 2, 3, fuck the police. Yeah, fuck them. Applaud any nigga. Damn right, we could lose a few of them. We got enough of them. My niggas on the corner, they be dodging and dunking them. Bitches getting